Hey guys, Dr. Dex here. Welcome to the Dr. Dex podcast. Calvin, that intro music, like I say every single week, is amazing. Are you editing that out? Or are you leaving it in?
No.
Okay.
I'm leaving it.
Attaboy. That's my son, and that's his music, and that's what we're all about. Today, we have a really special guest, Mr. Marty Hodis. Personal friend of mine. I've known Marty about 24 years, 20-some years.
Close
About 24 years. Close to it.
That.
Marty is a road warrior. Used to be. He's since retired. He used to live in Washington State, really close to me, about a half an hour away. But the excessive cost of living in Washington State forced him to move away, which saddened me, but I'm happy for him. And we're going to get into all that. But the reason I wanted Marty on this podcast was because you can't obtain wisdom. Or you do, but it's seldom is it given to you on a platter. Usually it's some kind of experience that you have to have. But Marty is full of wisdom. And if you listen to this podcast and you heed what he says, you might just take away a nugget or two to implement it into your own scenario. So Marty, thank you for being here. We really appreciate you.
And, my pleasure, Doc.
Tell me a little bit about you. What are you currently up to, that kind of thing, and we'll go from there.
Well, I'm right now in the middle of building another house, trying to teach Kansas contractors how to actually build a home. They're still in the 1970s here on modern construction, such as a three-stud corner, California corner. How to put up fascia on a house. So that was an interesting discussion the other day. Simple strapping the corners, load bearing, making sure you got studs going all the way down from the roof, from a beam to your floor. I had questions on about a hinge wall and how you doing the hinge wall. I thought I would literally had been stepped back in the 1970s. Here in Kansas, there's no building codes. Well, you do. You can follow ICC, UBC building codes, but there's no one. You'll anybody listen to this. Well, there are no building codes. You have to follow. You can really do anything you want. There is no building permits required. No building inspectors. No plumbing inspectors. No electrical inspectors. No inspectors whatsoever. Everybody does everything. Only time you need to actually have a license is if you are doing something within a city. So out here in the middle of nowhere, you do what you want. Right now I'm building a 1,600 square foot home, and I got a 30 by 50 foot shop. And guess what my building permit cost was? Zero.
Wow.
And I don't even have to report that I have a new structure on my property for 3 years. So when I escaped, I escaped Washington State is because, I'm 68, my wife's 70. I had to look at what my income was going to be and where I could live and what benefits old people can have. As I say, I'm 68, and where I could live for cost of livings. And I stumbled upon Kansas. It was 2017. I was on a business road trip, and you may know the product is something called G-tape.
Oh yeah, of course we do.
So I was in Kansas City. I was in Denver, and I had some business about G-tape, and I had another appointments in Denver to spread the word of G-tape, and I had 4 days to waste, and so I spent 4 days running around Kansas, and man, I loved the way. Even in the middle of wintertime, it was cold March. It was still sunny. And the people were strange people. I'd drive down a country road and people would wave at me. And I'm going, who's waving at me? Why are they waving at me? And so it was just the overall friendliness of the Kansas people that attracted me.
Nice. Yeah. So you did get around. So Marty, before you left the state, you were in the building materials sales, right? Building material sales?
Yeah, I've been involved in lumber. We'll just call it lumber since about 1983. When the state of California thought that I needed to leave that state, so I moved back up to Washington, where I was originally from, and got into framing houses. From there, I had a company called Pacific Arch, We made segmented Gothic arch homes, and that was a pretty successful business for about 10 years. And then one day, the owners of Arrow Lumber gave me a buzz, and previously it was Lumbermen. They gave me a buzz and said, hey, you want to come work for us to be a contractor salesman. You know your stuff, you know how to sell, you know lumber, you know contractors. And I said, yeah, no problem. So I worked for them for about 5 years, being a contractor salesman, outside salesman only. I couldn't handle being behind a desk. From there, I met every big contractor within Washington State one way or the other. I pretty much conquered excuse me, I got a cat that's wanting to claw up my legs. And I hate cats, but they seem to attract me. So from there, I pretty much conquered Western Washington in terms of lumber sales. I was probably one of the dominant people between me and the guy over at BMC. And then Georgia Pacific walked to my office one day and said, "Are you tired of this yet?" And I said, "Sure." I said, let's get the hell out of here. And then I took over Eastern Washington. Turns out those scumbags only hired me for 6 months to take over Eastern Washington territory until they decided to close it down. That was in 1995.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, so I picked up I quit a $100,000 job, and that was $100,000 in 1995. So
wow,
it was a monster salary, and I quit that job, moved my family to Eastern Washington, took over a territory, and then in one cold night, I was down in Walla Walla, and I got an email, snowy night, saying if your name is on this list, you no longer have a job. I'm going, what the hell is this? I just moved here.
Right.
Turns out they just needed a body to fill the position for 6 months. But I had already, in that 6 months' time, I already had built up a fairly reputable reputation within the industry. That another company called Orpak hired me right away, and I was able to just step right into that role with the same customers. Orpak didn't appreciate. Orpak hired me on some commission numbers that were just monster. They didn't know how big they were because they didn't know me and didn't know my sales abilities. And so I looked at the numbers and I says, excuse my language. I said, heck, I said, I can meet those numbers in about 3 to 4 months. Their previous salesman had never done much with the territory, but I already knew the territory. And in the 6 months I was there, I already got to know the owners of all the lumberyards. So it only took me about 3 months to meet a year sales goals. And that's selling doors, plywoods, lumber, cedar, pines. And I was there for about 4 months when they called me into a meeting and said, hey, by the way, my first paycheck was a little over $10,000. So, and that was just the commission side.
Nice.
Yeah. So I got, this was 1990. See, that would have been 1997. So they called me into a sales meeting and had to go down to Portland. They told me they were gonna have to readjust my commission, and I went, huh? What do you mean readjust? Well, you're making more than our top salesman. I said, well, you hired me on these numbers. Why don't I get these numbers? Well, we didn't expect your territory to do as much as it was. I said, fine. What's my new numbers? So they set what they thought was an unattainable goal. What they didn't know is it was at the end of the year, and I was sandbagging a whole bunch of sales. I was sandbagging a whole bunch of quarterly sales that needed to be put in at the end of the year. So I hit the end of the year quarterly sales in 1 week, and it was about 3 weeks later, in the end of January, they called me in again and says, we got to do your commission structure again. The owner of Orpak told me that I'm making as much money as he was. Well, that went all well and fine for about another year. And then one day they decided that my britches were bigger than they were, and they're going to let me go, and they were going to either let me go or readjust my sales structure again. I simply reached over to the desk and said, hey, can I borrow your phone? I says, my cell phone's not working right. And I picked up this phone and I called up my buddies at Humphrey Lumber. And while I was sitting across the desk, I simply asked the guy I said, John answered the phone. I said, hey, John, how's it going? He says, he said, Tony, it was pretty good, Marty. I said, no problem. He says, hey, I need a job. And I'm sitting right across from the Orpak, my boss at Orpak. He says, Marty, you're hired. When can you come in? And I said, well, I'll be in on Monday. So then the phone was hung up, and I told the ORPAC boss that I says, I got to go into Tacoma on Monday, and by Tuesday, all this business will be gone. And sure enough, it took me till Thursday to take all the business away, all the cedar business, pine business, door business, everything I could take that I just took right over to Humphrey Lumber.
Good for you.
From then on, I pretty much had a large sales territory, and my specialty was engineered lumber. And then, and I made a name within the industry of trying to know my stuff. I stayed up on reading everything that came into the world in terms of building materials, techniques, always reading, always reading. I grew up in a household of a dad who was somewhat of a not somewhat. He was a genius engineer. My father was a difficult father. If you've ever had an engineer as a father, but he was a certified genius, and so you had to adjust to that. There's a lot of products out there that you'd use every day or see every day that my father was directly involved in. The NASA space shuttles. If you ever look where the NASA space shuttles are stored, that big, huge massive hangars, those big, huge doors that go up in the air, that's my dad's invention. The revolving restaurant in the Space Needle. These stories can be told if you go onto YouTube and look at my page. You can see my dad right before he died. He was telling this is a story like the revolving restaurant in the Space Needle. He was my dad was an alcoholic, and he was in a restaurant called the Carousel down in Louisiana. In fact, it's still around. And the Carousel went around in a circle, and he was drinking his typical drink, which was a vodka and orange juice, a screwdriver, and it came across the news how the World Fair was coming to Seattle. And they were going to build a Space Needle. Well, the Space Needle at the time did not have a revolving restaurant. It was just going to be a stationary restaurant. And he made a simple phone call and said, hey, why don't we put a revolving restaurant in the Space Needle? This is 1959. And they said, how are you going to? I said, how are you going to do that? They more or less said, how are you going to put it? He says, just leave the engineering up to me. And
wow.
So sure enough, so there was a company called Western Gear Corporation down in Everett. It's now where the Western Gear Corporation is now where the Everett naval base is. But
okay.
And he came back and showed the Space Needle people how to build a revolving restaurant. You can hear his stories on YouTube. So living with a dad that was a genius. There's lots of other stuff out there. The missile actuators on the F-16s that launched the missiles. Those are still his design. This transatlantic pipeline equipment to lay the pipeline. Those are his designs. The oil equipment that you use to tighten up the oil rigs. You've seen those big, huge, massive claws they clamp onto the oil pipes to, those are all his designs. He has more patents on. Oh, if you ever ever hear about the Glomar Explorer? Okay, so the Glomar Explorer was invented by Howard Hughes, and in 1968, the Russians lost a sub off the coast of the Hawaiian Islands. And that sub it was down close to down 5,000, 6,000 feet. Well, we had no technical way of raising that sub, so they came to my dad and said, hey, we want you to invent a way to go down 7,000 feet in the ocean bottom and pick up a sub.
Wow.
So there's a documentary that they've mentioned my dad's engineering. We used to joke with my dad when we were kids about how he failed in something. And with that failure, he would always have this seething grin in his face, and he'd always, because it always dug at him that we would say he failed because all the news said that we weren't successful he was not successful on one thing in life, and that was raising subs. But we knew it wasn't true. We just dug at him. And he always would say, he goes, sons, what I built would raise two subs at one time. Well, when he died right before I came out here, he gave us the CIA tapes and a book called the CIA's Forgotten Secret, the Glomar Explorer, and it showed how they brought those subs up and how his engineering was behind it. So that's my young childhood history of reading his How to Blow Things Up books.
Cool.
He was a demolitions expert. And
Were you able to capture any of those patents and keep them?
Oh, no. Those are, when you work for a company, those patents belong to a company.
Roger that.
I got in trouble quite early in life.
Okay, let's talk about that.
Well,
let's rewind. Wait a minute. We want to rewind a little bit. We do want to know about your early history of life and as much as you want to cover. But you've got so many great stories. I mean, who would have thunk that the Space Needle one alone is great, and I know some more that you're going to tell us that are just going to be amazing. So
my wife and I were up there like last month, and she was asking like, "How did they do this?" I'm like, "I don't know."
Well, you can hear.
Now I know.
If you go on to, as I say, my YouTube channel has basically 100 subscribers, maybe a couple hundred. In there is, I just put in the tag M. Hodis is my. You'll find 3 videos of This Is Your Life for my dad. He's a very, very dry speaker. He had a full ride scholarship when he was 16 years old to the University of Washington. Think of that. Think of that. 1942, a full ride scholarship at 16. And by 17 years old, he was the Navy said, "Come with us, son." And so he worked. He was a merchant Marines, but he was already he didn't have to go through any military training. They made him a lieutenant right off the bat, right out of college. And from there, and when World War II ended, they said, "You're not going anywhere." He wanted to go home. They said, "No, you're not going anywhere. You're now going to work for the Army." So they took him from the Merchant Marines over to the Army, and he was in the Army for 4 to 5 years, doing blowing stuff up and doing demolitions and engineering. He then wanted to leave and come, be a civilian, and they said, "No, we've now classified your knowledge." This was 1954, 55. You are now working for the Air Force. So he worked. He was in the Navy, the Army, and the Air Force.
Wow.
And that's and then he got out and worked for the Forest Service and started blowing up roads and doing things with his demolitions knowledge. And I got hold of that demolitions knowledge when I was like 12 years old.
Yeah.
I found the how to make explosives in the field book that he used and wrote in World War II.
Do you have a copy of the Anarchist Cookbook?
I don't need a copy.
No, I have a copy of that.
I don't need a copy of that. It's all in my brain. So I used to blow things up across the street from my house on Mercer Island was one of the places. And,
oh, cool.
Yeah. And then I got kicked out of school when I was in 6th grade for. What? Go ahead.
In 6th grade? Why?
Well, my brother had gotten back from Vietnam. This was in 1970. Well, it was 1972, 73. And our teachers said it was open reading periods, and I could bring any reading material I wanted to school. So, can you guess what kind of materials I brought to school?
How to blow things up.
No, I brought my oldest
Hustler?
brother's Playboys. I brought
okay.
I brought so you're in 6th grade, and so I brought my oldest brother's Playboys to school. And so I got kicked out from there, and that was in 6th grade. In 7th grade, I did take the knowledge of how to do explosives. So I called in a bomb scare in 7th grade because nobody wanted to take back then. The whole school had to have the day off to take these tests. They had basically national grading tests. I don't know if they do them anymore, but nobody wanted to take the test. So they said, "Hey, Hodis, why don't you?" They'll believe you're a bomb scarer. You're already known for blowing it up across the street. And so I went ahead and called a bomb scare in, and unfortunately, the same kid in 6th grade who narked on me for the Playboys was the same kid who narked on me in 7th grade for calling it a bomb scare. Now, if we go back to this, so I was arrested for that and taken to the FBI.
Really?
Oh yeah. I was arrested.
Dang, Marty,
FBI?
you're only at 7th grade, and
I'm only in 7th grade.
You already blew my question.
That's
probably
That's
has
for our
more.
bonus episode.
Oh,
probably has more.
We haven't even got to any part of this.
No. So anybody listening to this right now, we already have some pre-scheduled bonus episode content with Marty that's worth the subscription. So if you want to hear it, man, you gotta go over to Patreon and sign up. But I want to hear about this. So go ahead, please.
So in seventh grade, the FBI shows up, right? And they haul, they haul me down to of all places, the regional FBI offices.
Are you scared at this moment in time, or concerned?
If you ever met my father, you're not scared about anything. Okay, so.
Oh, okay.
My dad was a very big, imposing man, in all senses of the words. And if you lived in his household, there's no one more scary. There was no one more scarier than my father than anybody.
Anything short of murder, like you're cool with, because your dad could help you out with it.
Oh yeah, well, my dad helped me out a lot. We can tell that story on a Patreon. So. Patreon
awesome.
channel. So I'm sitting in the FBI. I'm sitting in the FBI.
How much time we have left?
I'm sitting on the FBI office. It's when I was in seventh grade, and then there comes walking in my dad, because his office now, the FBI office in Everett, was just a half a block away from Western Gear Corporation, and I didn't care about the FBI agents. I just was laughing at them. But then when my dad walked in, he's 6'6" and 260, 270. And in a full suit and tie, and he comes walking in there, and simply grabbed me by my neck and said to the FBI agents, "This is handled now. From now on, this is handled," and didn't say anything more to the FBI agents. That was it. Just grabbed me, picked me up, and dragged me home.
Yeah.
So that was what I was now seventh grade, 12,
okay.
13 years old. By 14 years old, I didn't have a house to live in.
Why not?
Because my dad didn't appreciate the pot I was growing on the roof of the house.
How much pot were you growing, and how did you cultivate it?
Realize this is 1973.
Okay.
I was growing pot on the roof of the house. We had a house that was a flat roof house, so we had big, tall sides on the side and a flat roof. I come home from school about 2:30 in the afternoon, and my dad's home, and I went. I said, "Uh-oh, the dad's home. Something's gotten, Dad never came home until it was 6 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
So, because he had to travel from Everett that time. That during the time we were living, we had a house on Mercer Island, but Dad worked out of Everett, so it was a 2-hour commute. Even in the 1970s, it was a long commute.
Oh, suck deal that is, yeah.
Yeah. And so I come home, and my dad didn't say anything to me. But he was waiting for my two other brothers to get home, my little brother and my older brother, Scott. He hauled us all out to the garage, and he then opened up the van door, and there he pulled out 3 suitcases and handed us all a suitcase. And then he pulled from around the front of the van, was my 5 marijuana plants. Mm-hmm. And my dad had a master's degree in horticulture and forestry, so he knew the botanical names of pot back in the 1970s. He says, "Okay, who's growing the cannabis sativa here?" And so nobody fessed up. Of course, I'm not going to fess up to this. He says, and that's when he says, "Grab your suitcase and everybody's out of here now." And that was my younger brother, my older brother, mm-hmm. both pointed the finger at me, and it said, "Marty." And, that's when he handed my suitcase to me and said, "You're out of the house." Okay. So I am now I'm now homeless. I'm 14 years old and homeless. My dad was good.
What did you do?
Oh, I walked the 5 miles to my sister's house.
Okay.
I got up to my sister's house, and she goes, "What took you so long?" And so she says, "What took you so long?" I said, "Well, you could have come picked me up." She says, I knew you needed a little walking time, so I moved in with her. And she goes, I was there for about a half a day, and she goes, "There's a greenhouse out back that needs to get tending to, and what to tend it to with." And I said, I said, "So you want me to grow in the backyard?" She goes, "Oh, hell yes. I saw those plants even before." She says, "I knew you were coming here before you knew you were coming here." And, so I lived there until I was 16, and we, just down the street, there was a water tower down the street that grew the best mushrooms in life. So we we used to call them the water, or we used to call them the water tower mushrooms. They were these big old cubensis. They were big old. They were big old cubensis mushrooms that are about the size of big chocolate chip cookies.
Did you ever do spores tests on those things?
No, they didn't have to. They were the cubensis. We had.
You already knew.
Yeah, we already knew it was a water tower mushrooms. Everybody.
Okay, so hold on. So you're between 14 and 16 when you lived with your sister. Were you still attending junior high or high school?
Oh yeah, no, high school.
High school.
High school. Yeah,
Okay.
high school.
So while you're in high school, besides getting high, were you are you any good at academics? Are you naturally smart?
No. Okay, so I am I was an unchallenged person in high school.
Okay.
The best classes I ever took was wood shop, ceramic shop, and metal shop.
Man, I'm down with wood shop. I wish they would have never got rid of it.
But I was very smart in mathematics and science. But I was not challenged because the brain matter, my dad's brain matter, of course, I'm a junior. And so, I took a lot of mathematics and science classes and said F the English classes and history classes and things like that.
Okay.
But so I was very good in math and sciences and still am to this day.
All right, cool.
One of the worst things that ever happened to me was when somebody taught me, we were taught speed reading in school.
Uh-huh.
The Evelyn Wood School of Speed Reading. That's the worst thing that can ever happen to anybody is learn how to speed read. You actually destroy your ability to read anything for pleasure, because it teaches you how to eliminate all the thus, these, those, all the connecting words. So even to this day, I can't read for pleasure. I can't read a book.
Really?
Oh yeah, because I can scan a page in 90% comprehension in about 2 seconds.
That's pretty amazing. Like,
yes, when my wife was going through nursing school, I used to she'd just hand me their textbooks and I'd highlight the whole book and a couple chapters right away and hand it to her.
Crazy, man.
Yeah. So I was, by the time I was 17, I had my first house.
Okay, hold on. So you're 14 to 16. You're with your sister. What happens at 16?
Oh, at 16, I temporarily moved back in with my dad, mom and dad for like 4 months. But when you're living with your sister and you have all the freedom of the world, because I had this entire house basically to myself. She had an apartment above their garage. So when you're at that age and 14 to 16 years old, you have a free reign. You come and go anytime you want. My only restrictions were that I had to babysit the twins. She had twins when I needed a babysitter. Other than that, I came and go anytime I want. And I used to, back then, the CBs were a big thing when Bigfoot and all the CB radios were big things. So I had this big old huge monster antenna on top of our roof.
Oh yeah.
I used to black out the entire. I had an illegal amplifier on it that would put out about 200 watts. And because the way Mercer Island was situated was right in the middle of the lake, the lake acted like a big old parabolic antenna. So when my signal would come out of my big beam antenna, it would hit the lake and be amplified. I could knock out all the TV sets within about 10 to 15 block radius from around the house, and then my signal would go everywhere. It'd be just like having a NASA's big parabolic astronomic antenna sitting. You've seen those big, huge, massive beam antennas that they use for. Well, that would be equivalent of what Lake Washington to me, and I was in the middle of.
How cool is that?
There was many times that the the FCC would prowl the neighborhoods to try to get my signal. But I had friends who would say, "Hey, the vans are in the neighborhood. Don't key your mic because
don't
whenever
broadcast."
Whenever I key the mic, it'd have this big old thud, and it'd be thud and down, and then all the TV sets because. I would purposely tune the amplifier slightly off signal to be a real dirty signal. That way they couldn't track you. If you had a really clean, sharp signal, the FCC could track you and find you worse. So because I would off tune the frequency slightly, off frequency a little bit, and it would be a very dirty signal. But then that dirty signal would make all the TV sets in the whole neighborhood go blank and be screwed up. So
I think Saldana would enjoy this.
Oh, no doubt.
We did a deck for a guy. His name's Mike Saldano, and he's world famous for his amplifiers.
Oh, yeah.
Eddie Van Halen played them. He's met all these people too. Stevie Ray Vaughan, all the guitar greats played on Soldano amps, and he's so into his craft. It's just amazing. Anyways, so you're 16 and a half, and you're living at your dad's house.
I moved home for a brief period of time, just because I needed a break from my sister for a brief period of time. And of course, my habits of extracurricular activities never changed. And the one day I came home from school again. It was dinner time, and they're in the middle of dinner. Okay, so first of all, let's back up here. We had a rule in our house. Anything could be said to anybody at the dinner table. Anything. You could say anything you wanted to your mom, dad, brothers, sisters. Didn't matter. But if it left the dinner table, and any argument was beyond the dinner table, then you would get the wrath of the old man. So, and I'm telling you that we could say any 4-letter word to your mom or dad as long as it was at the dinner table. So I come home a little bit late that day, and it was when I'm about 16 and a half years old. Come home from school, and there in the middle of the dinner table is my bong. A beautiful, there's my bong. It's a beautiful glass bong sitting in the middle of the dinner table. And my mom had pleasantly arranged some very, very dead, wilted flowers. Well, we had, and now at that same dinner, my best friend of all time, he's passed away, Tim Treadway. Make sure you get a colonoscopy test. He didn't have to die. He ignored his symptoms. That's another story for another day. I miss him and love him dearly. We were childhood friends since kindergarten. You're getting into a tangent here.
Yeah,
I won't do it.
That's cool. Good. Just
That's the whole concept.
That's a tangent for another.
We're gonna have you back. I can tell you that already, because we're not gonna get half of what we need today out of you. I mean, you're gonna give us too much, and we're gonna come back for more. So
there's never too much.
You're gonna be a repeat. Marty.
So we're sitting around that dinner table, and everything was all copacetic. And then I said to my mom, I says, "Such a lovely arrangement you have there." She goes, "Oh, isn't it? I says, "I found this beautiful glass vase all by the garbage cans." And I said, "Oh, really?" I said, she goes, "Is this yours?" And I says, by coincidence it was, but I lost it. And which I didn't lose it. My younger brother at the time, had taken it out back and had done his fair things with it, and left it by the garbage cans. Now understand, he's the same brother who got me busted for the pot. Now, I didn't tell you that pot on the roof is my brother left a ladder up against the house, and he called up there, wanted to know how I was, how my pot plants were doing. Well, my mom was being always very inquisitive, wanted to know why the ladder was against the house, so she climbed the ladder, and that was when she found the pot plants on the roof, and that's ended up me getting kicked out of the house. So I stayed there till I was 16 and a half. I moved back to my sister after getting kicked out of the house again by my dad. Now, understandably, my dad and I had a great relationship besides the stuff I was not doing illegally. He was one of the best fishermen in the entire life. He taught me all sorts of how to salmon fishing. We could go out into Puget Sound and never had to use a depth finder or anything. We'd go out by point, no point, by possession head, and he'd simply say, "Head for that tree there, Marty. That cut in the hillside there. You're going to go at 2 knots." And I started fishing out in Puget Sound when I was 4 to 5 years old. He was so drunk. Now understand, you're 4 to 5 years old. You're running a 16-foot boat. And he was so drunk he'd pass out drunk. But because we were so young, he taught us how to run the compass and how fast and speed you were going. So you're out there by point, no point. If people don't understand, you have point, no point, and possession head, which are out the head of Whidbey Island, and you got to make yourself back to Edmonds, which is about a 17-mile run. Excuse me, somebody's out there on my property. 17-mile run, you got to do it in the fog. And so we learned right away, because he was always drunk, he said, "Okay, if you're heading this direction, this compass headed for this amount of time, going this many miles per hour, and you always had your watch. I had my grandfather's watch. Time it, and then you're just going to take a left, and sooner or later you're going to hit shore." So I learned how to navigate a boat in Puget Sound like the back of my hand. But by the time I was 17 years old, I had already purchased my first house.
How'd you do that?
Well,
How?
I found a
Tell
piece
me.
of what's that?
Tell the
Calvin?
millennial how to buy a house, please.
Yeah.
Well,
Calvin's
okay,
interested in this.
no problem. So, being an entrepreneur and already learning how to make money because I was already now understanding I was already going bald senior year of high school. I was already going bald. I already had a full beard, and so I learned that buying alcohol can make me lots of money. So I would used to go and buy all the kegs and buy a lot of kegs and a lot of 6-pack of beer for everybody on Mercer Island. If you're not familiar with Mercer Island, then you would know the Nordstroms. Everybody knows the Nordstroms name, right? Well, they used to own they used to own the Seahawks before them, but so all their kids, Mercer Island nickname was called Poverty Rock. And that was just a nickname because everybody on that island was all doctors, lawyers, dentists.
Loaded.
And very, very rich people. So I learned I could make money off all the rich people selling kegs and 6-packs of beer every Friday and Saturday. Well, anyway, I found a piece of property in Renton. If you're not, Renton is to the south of Mercer Island, about 20 miles southeast of Seattle for geographical. That was up for sale for $6,000 because they couldn't get a septic system permit to it. Well, because I was already involved in land and other things because of entrepreneurships and studying land through my dad because he was an engineer and a land expert, I knew that I could get a perk test on this property. So I bought the property for $6,000. We moved a mobile home onto it. With the help of my dad, he lent me the other money, the other $6,000. We moved a mobile home on it. So in 6 months' time, I took a property that was $6,000 and converted it to $23,000. So immediately, I sold the property because it was overlooking for $23,000. So in 6 months' time, I took $6,000 of my own money, $6,000 of my dad's money, and doubled it to $24,000 in 6 months. That got me hooked on houses, property values, and that they don't make any more land. Okay, land is not made anymore. So anytime that you can invest in real estate, it was always a good investment. No matter what it is, you'll never lose money on land. You may not make money, but you should never lose money on land. And we can talk about the houses that I flipped. My first house was $75,000. I bought. My first real house other than that house. It was covered by blackberry bushes. Nobody could see it. It was in the middle of a swamp. It turns out, I didn't know at the time, that my cousin down in Auburn had filled in a swamp. He brought in 170 truckloads of material and filled an entire swamp. He bought a whole bunch of houses when SeaTac Airport was being expanded, and his plan was to move all these houses down onto the swamp. Well, he got busted after the first house. When you fill a swamp in, the water's got to go someplace, correct?
Right.
Well, the water went to all the neighbors' houses and flooded all the other neighbors' houses. So the Army Corps of Engineers got involved. The Army Corps of Engineers got involved, and they shut him down. But it had this one house. Well, I didn't know it was my cousin's house. I had no idea. I just know I had $75,000. I needed a house. I saw a house covered by blackberry bushes, and I said, I'm going to buy that house. I found out who owned it. It was my freaking cousin. So he sold me the house. I went to the Army Corps of Engineers because I was not related in name, but my cousins had a different name. They allowed me to refab the house. I owned the house for 6 months. I bought the house for $75,000. I rehabbed it and turned it and flipped it in 6 months for $139,000. So that's almost double your profit in less than 6 months. So I had, and then meantime there, when I did that, I was a contractor salesman for lumbermen selling lumber.
So how old were you at this time?
Let's see, that was 19. That would be 19. So I was 30. I was 30 years old.
Okay.
29, 30 years old when I started. And then, from there I went over to Cleon, and I bought a 2-car garage. I was with my wife, Carla. I bought a 2-car garage on the Teanaway River. And I said, this is our new house. She goes, it's a garage. I'm not living in no damn garage. I lived in a garage once when I was young. She did. That's another story. She was a coal miner's daughter living in the, basically, she was living in the hollows. That's another, we won't go there. So I then took a 2-car garage where the people at the building department says you can't build here. That's on a floodplain. And I says, I can do anything I want as long as I stay in the same footprint. She goes, no, you can't build it. I says, listen, I can do anything I want if I stay within the footprint. You are required by code to give me a building permit. And sure enough, they did. I then took that 2-car garage I bought for $75,000. I built a second floor onto it, 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, and that was in 1999. I then flipped it. I went into that house for $100,000 because that's how it was $25,000 remodeling to turn it into a 2-bedroom house. I then flipped it, for $200,000. So I went from 75, so I made $100,000 on that house alone. I then stayed in Olympia for a while. But this time I moved away from Eastern Washington, went to had my territory over in back over in Western Washington. I lived in Olympia, in a scummy house by Tanglewild Lumber, and we had sex people busted for sex trafficking down the street. We had another guy who tried to escape through the backyard of our house and jumped over the fences and hid in my boat. Carla calls me on the phone one day. There's somebody hiding in the boat. Somebody hiding in the boat. And I said, "What do you mean there's somebody hiding in the boat? Call the cops." Sure enough, it was a guy that was being chased by the cops. I had the next door neighbor in the same yard tap into my water line, and was using my water for 6 months. So,
wow, colorful.
what stories what do you want? You want to go? You want to talk about building industry?
Well, hold on. Where are we at? 40 minutes? 40-ish?
We got about 20 more.
Okay, we got about 20 minutes more. Yeah. I think now's a good. So we got a little bit of your history.
A little bit.
We'll get more into your history in the bonus episode.
I do want to hear about the water tower mushrooms. I don't know if you finished that story.
Well, we used to bring those. We used to bring those delivered by the garbage sacks. They were 30-pound garbage bags. We'd bring them to school and hand them out like cookies to everybody. So, don't understand. This is the 1970s. This is the time of Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones, so on and so on. There was time when I got busted for in 16 for growing. I was a troubled kid at this age. So my parents made me go see a psychologist one time. And I said to the psychologist, "There's nothing you can do. Nothing you can say to me. Nothing you can do to me. You ain't going to change me." And so, in the 70s, they didn't have the internet. Of course, they would just KZOK had put out an announcement. This is a good story for you. KZOK put out an announcement and said, "Rock and roll concert, major announcement coming at 4:00 today." And so I knew it was going to be a huge band coming to town. It happened to be the Rolling Stones. Well, we didn't know it at the time. I'm in this little psychological meeting with this guy. I said, "Listen, you need to turn the radio on at 4:00 today, and I'll tell you what. No matter where we are in this session, we will not be in this session at 4:00." He goes, "Oh no, you're court ordered to be in here at 4:00." And I said, "No, my court order ends at 4:00 because there's a rock and roll band coming, and I need to get tickets for it." So sure enough, at 4:00 came, KZOK announced, it could be KZOK or it could be KSW, I don't remember. Announced that the Rolling Stones tickets were going on sale at 4:30 at the old baseball field in Seattle. I simply said to him, "I'm gone." I got in my car and I drove down to the baseball field. In the meantime, I'm yelling at him. He's yelling at me, "You owe me 2 tickets." So, we used to have to camp out for the Fidelity Lane ticket agencies for days in advance to get our tickets. So this is the 1970s. Yeah, I don't think there's a band that I've not seen twice of the classic rocks. Not more than that. I mean, Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones, Fleetwood Mac, Moody Blues, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Dire Straits. You can go on Jay Giles Band, Black Sabbath, Deep Purple. One of the best concerts of my life was Deep Purple and Black Sabbath at the Seattle Arena. And I used to travel around the United States just to go see rock and roll concerts. So I get bored. My best friend Tim would say, "Hey, so-and-so's playing down in Los Angeles, let's go." And I'd simply tell my boss, because I was a cook then, I simply tell my boss that, "Hey, I'm going down to the California Jam. I'm leaving now. If I have a job, I'm gonna get back. No big deal." And so we literally would get in our car and drive, and because I was such a good cook, they always would take me back, and I'd always have another job.
Awesome. Okay, let's talk about, because when I first met you, Um,
You were a bad boy.
yeah,
You were out there bending AZAC decking, AZAC railing.
yeah, timber. Yeah,
I briefly knew you because for a small period of time. Um, and they said the AZAC people said, "Hey, we need you to go deliver this letter to Dr. Dex." And I looked at the letter and I went, "Are you nuts? You want me to go tell Dr. Dex he can't bend decking and bend railing, and you're going to void all his railing?" So they handed me this letter. This is 2001. I'm pretty sure it's 2001 because we just took it where I was working for Cascade Capital or Capital
yeah,
Lumber.
yeah.
And
Capital.
we just brought over. They brought in the ProCell decking, which was AZAC. AZAC bought out ProCell. And they handed me this letter, and I had to come up to your job site and hand you this letter and say, everything you've done to your bent decking, everything you're doing to your bent railing, everything you do from now on is basically voided of warranties. You have no warranty on anything. And you know what he did? He took that letter, tore it up, and said, "Go to hell. I'm the doctor. I'll do what I want to do. You go on your way." So that was my real first experience with Dr. Dex doing his stuff. And that pretty much made him my friend, being the rebel that he was from the very beginning.
Is that true?
Yeah.
You ripped it up right in front of him?
Yeah. He crumpled it up, ripped it up, and threw it in the garbage.
I don't tell people that story very often because, but Marty, it was like instant friendship after that because he kind of laughed. He felt I remember that day because you felt terrible that you had to come to me and give me that information, and I didn't hold you personal. I was like, I don't care what these people say. I'm going to still do this no matter what. You can be with me or you can be against me, but I ain't stopping.
No, it was comical, and it wasn't soon after that. Well, it was a little, I knew that you were an outlet for product knowledge as we explored the world of AZAC decking back then, because AZAC was new to the market, new to the Pacific Northwest, and really because there was other brands of decking out there. Boy, I have stories on decking. Yeah, here's a quick story on decking. So the first decking on the market, I'll keep the names out of it, but it starts with a T and ends with an X.
Trex.
It's a popular dinosaur.
Yeah. So when I was a rep for an Eastern Washington, you'll love this one. So when I was a rep for Orpac Building Products in Eastern Washington, Trex was still pretty much in its infancy, and I had just made a monster sale to the marina over at Lake Chelan. It was two entire truckloads to one contractor. They installed this. I had been there several times during the installation process, but they installed the decking over the entire project. I get a phone call, an emergency phone call from the contractor, and he calls me up and he says, "You need to get, I don't care where you are in Eastern Washington, you need to get here, you need to get here now." And I said, "Well, I'm down in Yakima." He says, "I'll see you in 2 hours." And so I got there. I got rushed by 20 angry mothers, over 20 angry mothers, and there was blood everywhere, all over the whole deck of these docks, where there's these little child footprints of blood everywhere. And then the fathers were all yelling at me. Now I get the mothers yelling at me. "What are you going to do with all our..." Well, what happened was Trex in the early days had lousy quality control. So when they would get all their recycled garbage bags, they would just grind them all up. Well, there was a lot of pop cans in them. And in the pop cans, when aluminum cans, when they're put on the side, is like a little razor blade. So all of this decking had 1,000 little razor blades running up and down all the plastic decking. So kids are running up and down this brand new Trex decking, and these thousands of little razor blades were cutting their feet. Now you think that the fathers would be mad at me? No. The fathers were mad at me because they had used the Trex decking for bumpers around all the dock slips. And so every time they pulled up their boat, when they pulled up the boats, all this thousands of little razor blades were scraping all the gel coat off the boats. And then not only that, they then also used the Trex decking for their jet ski jump out in the middle of the lake.
Oh, no.
So they had the jet skis. They were taking the jet skis off the jet skis, and when they were running over the ramp, all these thousands of little razor blades were just peeling off like paper the layers of the gel coat off the bottom of their jet skis. So here I got 20 mothers screaming bloody murder at me because they think I'm the Trex person. I'm just a rep. I'm just a salesman. Yeah, I got 20 homeowner boat owners screaming at me. Who's going to take care of all the gel coat on their boats? So I've got other decking failure stories that we can talk about.
Boy, what a night! That'd be a great YouTube video.
The decking nightmare.
Decking horror stories.
Oh, we could.
I
would love this. I would love this as a video.
I got decking horror stories with evergreen decking. I got decking horror stories.
Hold your horses. Okay, so I'm looking over at Calvin and I can see his mind churning right now. So this.
If you could see me, you would see an evil smile.
Well, we need to capitalize on this, and if we could have you back as a guest on our YouTube channel,
sure.
Maybe we can turn that into a video, and then if it does well, then maybe it's something that we can have like a recurring thing. Because we're starting to wind down on time, and we still haven't gotten to coffee. We haven't talked about sports. We haven't. I mean, there's so much more that we have to talk about. But
coffee.
There's a huge elephant in the room too.
Coffee.
There is.
Well, I own property.
I
own I own property in Panama, and that was what I really.
Yeah, man. See, the whole podcast, this whole reason for this podcast is so people get to know you a little bit and get to know your backstory, and then usually we talk about whatever you're up to currently. But you're kind of retired, so my whole thing was like Marty has helped me develop some concepts. When we shot our television show, you were helping me engineer the automations that we put in these decks for the TV show. And I couldn't have come up with some of it without your help. And Marty, for me personally, is a sounding board. So if I have a concept or a consideration that I'm thinking about for any build, any deck, any issue, any problem, hey Marty, I was getting ready to attach this ledger to this house, and I kept coming up with error. I'm not attaching to anything solid. Oh. And so I cut a hole in the side of the wall and look up in there, and it's a web joist. So you taught me how to go 19.2 inches on center on those little diamond marks on the tape measure to figure out how to do your layout. There's just things that, everybody needs a Marty Hodis in their life, because it's always nice to be able to call somebody. And when I call, you pick up the phone and you go, "Hey doc, what's up?" And sometimes it's really short and sweet. Sometimes it's a longer conversation, but you never hesitate. If I say, "Hey, I got to go." "Okay, bye." You hang up before I get a chance to tell you why I got to go.
No. Your business is your business. I don't need to know why you're going.
Well, I know, but all I'm saying is there's more to this backstory than what I think people are getting out of this at the moment.
You can get into where, the day that that G-tape was brought to the market, and I threw you a couple rolls of tape, and you were on a nightmare build.
Well, who is the first person in the United States to use G-tape?
You.
There it is.
Bam.
You were the first contractor that ever saw G-tape.
I love it.
You were the first person. We had no idea I kind of knew what we had because I had never seen any tape like G-tape ever in my life. And I said, who am I going to take this to? I need to get some input. So I found you at that job site in Tacoma, down that little windy road, and you were there dealing with an absolute nightmare. And I said, "Hey, Doc, I know you're busy. I'm going to throw you a couple rolls of flashing tape, and let me know what it's like." Well, I wasn't even a mile and a half away when I got a phone call from you that said, "What the hell is this stuff?"
Yeah.
Well, and that's when the legend started.
Well, it kicked ass over. Sorry. It kicked butt over using Vicor, which was what I was using before you came up with this really amazing high-end acrylic, self-peeling, sticking, doesn't stick to itself tape. So for all of you out there that are into construction and you've ever heard of G-tape, Marty Hodis is the guy that brought G-tape into the market from Japan. He developed the first logo, and that took forever, right?
Yeah, it's 28 tries. The first logo I ever put out, though the Japanese thought it looked like a nuclear bomb exploding on the ocean.
Oh my God!
Oops.
Yeah. I got called.
Try again.
I got called at midnight our time, and the Japanese were screaming at me. About 12 of them were screaming at me in mixed English, and told me to God that I didn't release that logo to the market, because what it was a Japanese temple, and behind the temple was the ocean with a rising sun, and I thought that was representative of the G-tape, and they thought it would look like an atomic bomb exploding over the ocean.
Oh, okay. So you touched a few. So you touched a few on that one. Okay, well.
Jesus Christ.
So G-tape. So I was filming this television show, and Marty walks up to me with a 12-inch roll or something like that. He says, "Hey, why don't you try using this instead of your Vicor?" And I'm like, "Okay." And then I was like, I liked it so, and I pulled it right out right there, right in front of him, and started putting it down. And you're like, well, hey, Doc, I didn't expect you to do it right now. I'm like, no, man, let's go.
That was famous picture. There's a picture on there that sold more G-tape. It was a big flat piece of decking, about 12 inches wide. And the G-tape the next day it just had sucked into the incising. And,
incising,
all the little incising, it's just sucked right into the incising. That picture sold more G-tape, along with a picture of some Canadian guy at minus 30 degrees, putting G-tape down. Hey, Canada, it's minus 30 degrees out here, and G-tape is sticking, and no problem. But that one picture launched G-tape down. Nobody had ever seen any tape.
And then it rained the next day.
Yeah,
and then I went out and took pictures of it with the water beating up on it. And I'm like, this is why I use this product.
So many people dish tape. There's so many naysayers out there who think the wood's going to rot underneath the tape. I'm going, you guys are a bunch of freaking idiots. I says, I get into debates with these guys all the time. I'm going, listen, it's preventing water going in. If it seals the screws. Without the tape, water just follows the screw all the way into the center of your treated board. It's a freeway without that tape. Do you have a roof on your house? I think you're past time, if I don't know what Calvin thinks.
We got about 5 minutes.
No, you're good. Keep going.
Yeah.
That's
cool.
Stuff.
So I have no problem. I have no problem defending G-tape on anybody's page. There's the Prones Construction. I think he uses a hell of a lot of tape. I think he's a huge advocate of tape. Of course, nobody's better than you when it comes to tape. I have some objections occasionally about how you use the tape, and I do text message you, but you just tell me to go pound sand, Marty. I'm going to do what I'm going to do.
I think the thing that sealed it with me and the mothership.
Sealed?
Sorry, no pun intended. With the mothership was when I had to do I did this compass. The inlay.
The compass rose. Yeah.
Yeah, in the deck, and then I used your Nilo sheet.
Yeah, boy, what a fabulous decking on that. That was just, dude. Man, that whole decking was just fabulous.
I know, and then I went ahead and laid the wide stuff, which nobody else would get it, but you got it for me. The wide sheet, a 54-inch roll.
We got 36-inch wide sheets for you.
54.
54, the whole roll. It was right.
Yeah, the whole roll. And I said, I want that, and you got me some, and then I laid it out on that, and that got on national television when they played the actual when they played the episode on DIY Network. It showed that on the TV show.
Yeah, we had to keep. You had to keep the labels off it, though. We had to block.
Yeah, we had to keep. Yeah, because they weren't sponsors of the network. But that was really cool that actually made a clip on the show.
Board. Man, Nilo board. God, that was just stupid engineers dropping their presses on the move.
If you're gonna say, don't say that. You gotta explain the whole situation.
Okay.
But Nilo Sheet, Marty, he was repping this product. Marty would come to me with some of the coolest products, and he'd go, "Hey, check this out. This is what we got. This is the next latest and greatest." And I go, "Dude, I need this for certain applications where I need a flat space." That I need it waterproofed, and I need something that's going to be bulletproof. And he goes, well, they use this in marine work, in boats. They're going to use this building in boats. And I'll let you take it from there, Marty. But there were some imperfections in the product, and they were trying to figure out.
Nilo Sheet was made of recycled carpeting. So they would shave off the nylon carpeting off of rolls of carpet from the mills. But we've all seen carpeting. It's a big fluff. And so they had problems with the compression of the nylon carpeting. But the product took off. The product took off so fast that they couldn't keep up with production. And we can talk about that. That's a whole nother story. But stuff was indestructible. It was waterproof. It held a screw, like it held a fastener. You couldn't get a fastener out of the product. Once you put a fastener in it, it held stronger than any product. It was indestructible. The water, the salt water, you couldn't break it apart. But it was the imperfections in it that people didn't like, and too bad.
Well, you guys, you're working at Vandermeer at the time, and Vandermeer Forest Products, and they said, we're wholesaling this out. We're like, get rid of it, Marty. So Marty calls me and he's like, hey, I got 32 sheets or whatever it was. I said, I'll take them all.
Right. And in fact, I even cleared out regional lumber yards.
That's right.
I even called up lumber yards across the United States to find out, if they had 5 or 6 sheets. Because
I still have some 1/2 inch.
Yeah, that stuff was so valuable that we were buying stuff from all Louisiana, Texas, any place that stuff had, we were grabbing it right off the shelves.
It was a good product. No. So tell everybody what happened. So the technology was sold to Fiberon, right? No. Fiberon didn't. Fiberon bought it afterwards. The original plant they were in was too small. So they had to move the equipment over to a larger plant because it was this very, very $1 million presses. And in moving the $1 million presses, they dropped them. The crane dropped them. And so they dropped the presses. And so they were never able to get the presses realigned. They were underfunded. So they were never able to get the presses realigned to work again. Then Fiberon bought them. Thinking that they could go ahead and invest the money and get these presses realigned again. They were one-of-a-kind presses. Fiberon soon realized that it was too expensive to rebuild these one-of-a-kind presses. It was going to cost multiple millions of dollars to rebuild these presses. So then Fiberon just wrote them off, just took that money and walked away. Wow. Marty, you've got me elevated. But we're out of time. We're out of time. So we are going to jump into our Patreon bonus episode. So if you guys want to hear more from Marty, jump over to Patreon and join up, because I know there's some really interesting information coming. You've been one of the most colorful guests we've had, Marty. Your energy is infectious, and thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you so much. And yeah, if you guys have any other questions for Marty, leave them on the YouTube channel. You can also leave them on our Instagram page, because Marty often surfs the page and he does answer. When he knows when I get overloaded, sometimes I shut down a little bit, and I have to focus on the business, and I don't really focus on the followers. So sometimes Marty will answer questions for me occasionally, because he just knows what I'm going to say. And so when he does that, I'll notice, okay, I better start answering some questions, because there's something heated here or whatever. But you can find him. If somebody wants to talk to you, Marty,
on Instagram, I'm at POTUS quotes, which
POTUS
would be
quotes.
POTUS quotes. It used to be Roasted Right, but I don't do coffee anymore, so it's POTUS quotes. I am not politically correct, so
Excellent.
I'll tell you exactly
how it is and what it is.
How it is, what it is.
If you ever want to get schooled, just go against the grain with Marty, challenge him on something, and you'll find out real quick he really does know what he's talking about. Marty Hodes, thank you so much for being on our podcast. Looking forward to the bonus episode that we're going to go into right now. Calvin, hit that music, and we will see you next time on the Dr. X podcast. All right, guys, over and out.